All right, everyone. Today, our very, very special guest is the director of What If, Bryan Andrews. Bryan, welcome to Friends from Work. Let's go.
Woo!
Hello. Viva Las Vegas.
As you can see, if you're watching this, Vegas in the background. Perfect timing. Love that.
Vegas.
Yes.
Bryan, you have some history as a storyboard artist with Marvel, correct? I noticed that you worked as a storyboard artist on Infinity War, both Guardians films, Endgame, a bunch of others.
Mm-hmm.
What is that transition like from a storyboard artist to a director of an animated show? I would think that'd be a pretty natural fit. Yeah.
Yeah, but also, so for me, I'd been working and boarding in animation long before I did any of the live action stuff with Marvel. And I had actually directed some animation stuff before. So I was already kind of in that, it was in my wheelhouse already. But then having boarded some of the live action movies and working with other directors and producers, that does help a bit, you know what I mean? Because I just get a sense of, you're in the family, you've worked with them on a number of these things, you get a feel for it. And so when it came time for this, and I always worked in animation at the same time, even when I was still doing boards for them. And they knew this. And then when it came time for the show, Brad just gave me a call and was like, hey man, you want to work on something cool? And, the rest is history. So yeah, that's been pretty awesome.
Man, I was so curious, when we first started seeing things from What If, just promo shots and teasers. The animation style is really unique and a really fun way of getting across the comic book feel while also tying it into the MCU versions of those characters. What did the process look like on y'all's end when you were trying to land on an animation style?
So in the beginning, when it was just Brad and myself trying to figure something out, it wasn't a full green light yet. It was just a percolation of a thought, and then he ran past Kevin, and Kevin was like, "Oh yeah, maybe. Let's see. Maybe let's talk about it." So Brad and I worked together for a few months just to kind of talk about what could happen in the show, what it could be the thing, but also just focusing on what's it going to look like, how do we produce this, all this type of stuff like this. This is before we got AC involved to help us come up with a bunch of ideas and write a bunch of stuff. It was just early thing. It's like, let's just get them to buy off on the concept. You know what I mean? So we just thought of a bunch of random stuff. Like, what if Black Panther had the time stone and the cape? Just what if Loki was worthy and he had the hammer? Just things that in an instant you would have like just an image, and Kevin can go, I see what you did there.
Right.
To do like just a minute long little like teaser just for him and the trio. And then at the same time, I was preparing like what I thought I would want it to look like. And then we had Ryan Meinerding, who's like the god of Marvel design, character design for all the live action superheroes and all that type of stuff. He always wanted to work in animation too. And both he and I are huge J.C. Leyendecker fans, the famous, illustrator from, the early 20th century. Did a lot of the Saturday Evening Post covers before Norman Rockwell, did anything, and he has a way of idealizing his men and women and just having them be like just glorious and just beautifully painted and just so wonderful. And I'm like, oh, that would be awesome. And Hollywood's been trying to chase that look for years, like both in animation and as an inspiration for some things in live action. So I thought, well, let's like really try to go for it, because I don't want to go full comic, because I felt that was just too obvious. And I knew hopefully there'd be some projects down the line that Marvel would want to do where we can lean into that more. So for this one, I wanted something to tie closer to the cinematic universe. You know what I mean? Something that looked a little bit more, I don't know, polished, as though we're just a little less graphic. So I think the illustrated style was a way to go. And we showed Kevin some images of J.C. Leyendecker's work from back in the day. And Kevin was just oh wow, if it looks like this, I'm in. So it was kind of like, we sold him on that pretty quickly. And then we also looked at Mead Schaefer, Tom Lavelle, and some other illustrators of the time period, just for like lighting sensibilities and background type inspiration. We got our amazing designer, Paul Lassane, on board. And so while Ryan was working on character, Paul Lassane was trying to create the overall look for everything else to kind of work with the character. And we had to, we realized we need to go a little bit more graphic on some of the BG details. to match. The super painterly we originally went for wasn't going to match what Ryan eventually did with the JC Leyendecker version of the show. But eventually we got it all homogenized. It looked correct together, hopefully, from people who think that's the case, I hope. But But yeah, it was fun. And then from that, we just try to incorporate other things here and there. Like we draw a lot of inspiration from, at least me personally, anime when it comes to some of the effects animation. Explosions, magic, all that type of stuff. Anime, very certain. There's good anime, there's bad anime. The good anime does it like really, really well. So it was both with timing and sensibility, as well as shape language. We try to borrow from the best and then put it in our little filter and then try to make it work together.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating hearing about those. I would never have thought to go that far back with references, but that's so interesting, especially how we're able to show some of those Lidecker things to Kevin and the pitch.
I don't think he's even seen that before. And he was nerding out. I mean, Disney looked at Leyendecker and had that as inspiration for Pocahontas. That movie they did. They tried to go a little bit more angular and try to do some of this stuff, but that's hardcore.
I can see that.
And it was rough. It's like they really were inspired by it, but you don't fully. I think they would have loved to have gone further, but the technology wasn't there. And we were thinking we wanted it to eventually to do it all 2D, but there's a lot of content being made out there and a lot of really great animation houses that maybe would have been able to step up to the challenge. There weren't many because I think it's way too challenging. But there are a few that could have, but they were all busy on other people's stuff.
Wow.
So we had to pivot a little bit. And then I think in the end, I think, using the 3D for 2D was good for us, but I really wanted to push the 2D aspect. There's times when maybe we were not as successful as I would have hoped, but for the most part, our vendors did a fantastic job. And the time we had, that's the big thing. We didn't have a lot of time to get it together, and they worked tremendously hard on it, and we pushed them hard, and I think we got something that balanced out.
Well, the finale just aired and we're loving it. I'm sure our audience loves it. First off, is it a relief to be talking to us when now you can talk about everything finally?
It actually is, because early on we feel so bad because it's like we can't say anything. We're like, wait and see. I hope you like it. There's really but it's funny how people always want to ask the stuff that will spoil everything. And
right.
All right, man, I can't tell you.
We had a chance to chat with AC actually, like after I think episode 2 or 3, and it was a lot of that. We had fun talking about the first 3, but then it was all like, I can't say more than that.
Yeah.
So
right. And we try to avoid those questions, and we always laugh at the pressers at the front end, because people will just ask these questions that obviously you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, why even ask that question?
Exactly.
But here's my question. Okay, obviously the finale kind of culminates in this Guardians of the Multiverse thing. Did you guys have that idea at the onset and kind of worked backwards from that, or when in the process did that come together that, hey, they're gonna be pulled out by the Watcher and all that?
Right. I think it was relatively early on we realized that was going to be the case. Exactly who we didn't, because we had like 30 stories to choose from to give to Kevin to whittle it down to like a season's worth of stories. He was supposed to choose like 10 out of 30. But he ended up choosing like 12 or 14, and then it was up to us to like whittle it down. I don't know, man, there's so many that are good. So that was we kept saying it was just an embarrassment of riches. And then so once we started seeing, okay, well, here's what we've ended up with, this is what's in the season, then we were able to start thinking about what could possibly happen. So I think it was relatively early on, and it started becoming a little bit organic. I think very early on, Brad, our illustrious executive producer, and who it was his idea to do the show, really. He's like Marvel legend. He produced Ragnarok and Ant-Man and Black Widow, and he's really moved up through the ranks, and he's a badass and super cool. And this was his baby. This was his brainchild, and we just helped him make it happen. But with he was so giving too, because we got me on, I had crazy ideas, then got AC on, she had great ideas, and just working together as a team. And then she brought on Matthew Chauncey, who is amazing. And together we would just sit in that room and just have a blast and come up with craziness. So I think relatively early on we got that. But the exact ins and outs revealed themselves the more we kind of got more into the episodes and figured out what those episodes were, and we were like, oh, and then he's got to go back, he's got to get Strange, man, he's got to get back to Strange. That's the only one that can help him. It's like, yeah, and then we'll get this person and that person. So then, you know, things start, there's the old, it starts writing itself. That's not true, but you know what I mean. Some things start becoming more clear, you know, certain things reveal themselves, and you go, and once you get that piece, then suddenly these other pieces just go boop, 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 and start revealing themselves. You're like, oh yeah, and now we can do this. So yeah, it was always a little bit.
Quick specific question about the team though. I'm just going to ask you because you're here. Why not Spider-Man in the last fight? Are we led to believe that Spider-Man didn't make it out of the Wakanda reality he was in with Thanos and the Stones? Or did we just shy away from Spider-Man?
I think we just shied away from Spider-Man because the team had to just be a certain amount. We just couldn't have just everybody.
Right,
yeah, sure.
But we were thinking about an idea.
And Zombie Wanda, I guess, was the person that came from that universe anyways.
And she's the one that came to that. And you know, it's funny. It's there's no way anyone could know this in the show. But like super secret, like mega internal stuff. It's like the zombies that he pulls from is not necessarily the zombies from the episode we saw. So for example, there's lots of universes out there where those events play out. There's probably a version of that zombie universe where Hope doesn't get bit and doesn't die. There may be a version of that universe where Tony never turned into a zombie and he's doing his best to deal with it, right? But in a variety of those universes, you probably still get a zombie Wanda. So in my mind, they actually pulled probably from like a different one, but that's like a super deep cut that does nothing to hurt anyone's enjoyment of the episode, really. But it kind of answers a lot of those other questions, like, well, then what happened to those characters that you love? It's just like, well, those characters you love might be in a slightly different universe. Like it's those little types of Easter eggs I enjoy having in, whether people are aware of them or not, just because we clearly pulled from certain universes that you saw clearly, because we literally show you that. But there's a lot of universes out there that are very similar, but things worked out just a little bit differently. And so for me personally, I feel that they pulled from a different universe for that zombie Wanda, because I like to think that universe we showed you is still there's still adventures going on over there, I would believe, with all the universes. Like just because there's like that little tease of a cliffhanger, it's like, they're not done. There's stuff going on, you know, and maybe one day we get to visit some of those other universes. Maybe we don't. I don't know. But I kind of like the fact to think that life goes on over there, that other adventures are happening out there. We just may not be seeing them, you know?
Well, and we clearly picked up on that vibe because so many of the episodes ended with a cliffhanger that you're kind of like, are they coming back to? But I think I agree with what you're saying. I like the idea of kind of like Nolan's Inception, where it's like, let the audience just run with what they think it is or not and leave it there. I like
they're trying to button up the story proper, but let you know that universe continues, that there's still other challenges that may come and victories to be had and all of that, you know? So yeah, I think that's part of the fun.
Talking about, you were talking about bringing Strange back, and not only would I say Strange was one of my favorite parts of that final episode, but the Strange episode itself was, I mean, I thought it was so bold and so different from what I might normally expect from, you know, someone who's read the What If comics, but then also the rest of the show and the ideas that you were talking about. There are some that you can imagine yourself landing on fairly easily, even though I think the execution of all of them was really fun and creative. But like, you know, the Fury's Big Week episode, like what if the Avengers never came together? You can see yourself getting there. But the Doctor Strange episode was so unique in the way that it was a very nuanced kind of what if premise.
Yes.
And it gave way to something that was so, I mean, emotional and powerful.
Yeah, that was a blast. And it's funny because we always knew that early on there was going to be a Doctor Strange episode, just because, you know, we love Doctor Strange and we wanted to do something awesome with him, and we wanted to show him off. And like, you know, personally, because I did boards on the Doctor Strange movie, and you know, there was a lot of big, crazy, cool magic that we were coming up with and playing with that you don't really get to see in the film. You know, there's a lot of things that go on in making a big movie, and a lot of cool ideas that maybe fall by the wayside for one reason or other. And, you know, it just gets distilled down to a certain way. And so you still end up with something great, but sometimes you cry about some of the stuff that got lost along the way.
Sure.
And this is a way for hopefully us to show some of that stuff, you know, in not that was specifically done for that movie, but just the notion of being like, let's see some freaking magic, you know, and not just a bunch of sling rings or something.
One of my,
not to knock
sorry.
Doctor Strange, but you know,
right. No, for sure.
One of my, go ahead.
We talked about that in our Doctor Strange episode, about how it was sort of a chance to really go crazy with the some of the almost like kind of Ditko-esque, but also you know, I'm a big fan of, as people that listen to this podcast know, Jonathan Hickman's Avengers stuff, and I felt like there was a little bit of what he does with Doctor Strange and his new Avengers series came through. So
the thing is, it's like we always knew we wanted a Strange episode, and we always knew we wanted to be a little bit darker, right? Like like the idea that he meddles and gets in trouble. Now we didn't know exactly how, but then AC was able to jump in, and she was able to borrow from an experience and be like, ooh, and tie it to Christine and be like, ooh, this could be the thing. And that really tied in the emotional content, you know, and purpose, and we're able to create what we were able to create, and it was so well done, and allowed for all the things, allowed for the crazy magic, allowed for the and I always want animation to go there. And one of the things that excited me about doing the show, and I was talking to Brad about it early on, the early days, it's like, it's genre. It's each episode can be, it's different. We can get comedy, we can get action, we can get horror or drama, but we have to push it. We have to push it, because I always feel like in animation, sometimes maybe certain studios aren't allowing the creators and the animators and the writers to go where they can, because they still think it's for kids. Right. It's like, this is TV 14 and it's for everyone who watches a Marvel movie. And we want to go beyond even sometimes where the Marvel movies go, if we can. Because we're free. It's the multiverse, right? It's like, here's an adventure that goes really bad for these heroes, and like we can show that. And that was exciting and exhilarating and freeing, you know. And it's something that I've been wanting to do in animation ever since, you know, in school. You know, when we were learning our craft, we're like, why is it always this? Why can't it be that? And the fact that we can finally start doing stuff that addresses that is pretty awesome.
Okay, you inspired me to think of two things really quickly. I got to get on board. One, going back to the Strange thing. And I don't mean this as a slight to What If, but when we went into What If, we knew that we were going to like playing out all these different stories and seeing these different things with our characters. What I didn't know, though, as we went along, inadvertently, I think you guys enhanced our experience of the main MCU characters. Like the Doctor Strange episode, for example, we found ourselves leaving going, I learned more about the Strange I know already. Because, like, for example, we know he's desperate enough that he'll do whatever he can to save his career. But now what does it look like? How far would he go to save his heart? And I don't know. So like these episodes ended up teaching me more about the main MCU timeline characters than I thought they would ahead of time.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've been, and that, I mean, that's just an exciting byproduct, because we love the characters too. And we want to see more of those characters, and getting them in unique situations. We just get so much more out of it. Like you said, it's expanding your view of said character, because you're seeing them go through things you didn't see them go through in the movie, but they're still true to themselves, but they're expressing it differently. So there might be a slight variation of that person you thought you knew. So that's great. But to your point, I think it is true, and it's an exciting byproduct, because you see certain reactions. And, you know, people are saying that, you know, it's a good credit to, like, you know, our writing team and Brad's and Kevin's guidance, because they're just always giving us great notes and improving things. And, you know, they feel like people are saying like, oh, it feels like this is the Natasha I always wanted to see in the movies, but didn't quite get a chance to see. Or like I see things where people who have always loved Doctor Strange, now they're winning over their friends who weren't always a Doctor Strange fans. Like, oh, I get it. Yeah, Strange is cool, man. I dig this character. You know what I mean? So I think people are discovering things anew, or be reminded why they liked said thing to begin with. But it's casting a wider net. It's bringing others in, or opening people's interest. Like the amount of love that falls onto certain people and why, it's amazing. There's some people that are like, I don't know if I like that Party Thor stuff. I really don't like it. But then there's other people who are like, I love that Party Thor. Oh my God, I gotta have more of that Party Thor. Or Howard, because we love Howard the Duck, and like there's a chance to, like, show off some Howard the Duck. We're like, hells to the and Darcy. we love Darcy, so it's like we want to bring her back. And we did, and also Jane Foster, bring her in, you know, and do some cool stuff.
Yes.
The other thing I was just gonna say is complimenting on you on what you said, because right at the time that some of these episodes are coming out, specifically the zombies episode, we talk a lot in our podcast about how I'm not like a blood and gore fan at all, right? But I want to know that like these little subtle choices have consequences in the action. So like that's something I really appreciate about Black Widow, right? Like when she hits her nose or breaks her leg, you see the leg sideways or her nose is bleeding. Whereas some of the MCU movies don't go that far. And right as we were kind of comparing that, we got the zombies episode where you're seeing like Cap get chopped in half and people eaten, and it was like, thank you. Like, I appreciate you pushing it that far that way. Not that I'm a gore fan, but I want to feel the consequences of what you're trying to tell me exists.
Yeah, no, it's true. And like for the zombie one, you know, there's only so far we could go with the gore, and we didn't want to go crazy with the gore, just because
you don't have to.
We don't have to. And also I think that's a given. That's something that people might often do with that situation. It's kind of like, it's not really about the gore. It's like, yeah, that's a byproduct, and that can be fun, but that's not the thing. Right. So I like holding some of that back a little bit. So then if you do something that pushes it a little bit more, then it hits harder. You know what I mean? So I think that's fun. But yeah, we did have our hands tied just a little bit, just because of the nature of the rating we were at on the TV. So it's like, they're like, you can't have anything that's too red. So I think like, oh, it's a little bit darker, and you know, and it better be like maybe out of focus and, you know, close to camera and dark, and then, you know, so we had some of those caveats, but we still got away with some stuff we didn't think we'd like, cutting Falcon in half or blowing up Zombie Sharon, which was like, oh, man, we're doing it, but I really hope someone doesn't try to cut it the last minute.
Well, I appreciate your effort on that.
We tried. Yeah, no, that was great. Yeah, no, that was a fun one to do. It's like, of course we got to do this, you know, boom. Right. That would happen.
Yeah, right.
So,
well, now that you're finished with the season, before we let you go, we're always just curious, did you have a particular moment from this entire season one, whether it's an entire episode or just a part of an episode, that you really loved, that you would say is if not your favorite one, that kind of particularly spoke to you?
Wow. You know, it's there's so much in the whole season. There's so many different parts. It's really hard to choose just one. It's like there's so much stuff that's great. That's the one thing when you're working on all of them, it is really hard to choose just like, here's the one thing I love. But I think you know, getting some of the action on screen has been that's been great. I mean, all the character and all the emotion, of course. To me, that's a given. You have to do that stuff, otherwise you just don't have a show. But but sometimes I think people might leave the action by the wayside because they think action just like, you know, whatever, it's action, who cares? It's like, no, action, that stuff is important. If it's just as important in a way, because if you've got all the great character and you have garbage action and no one comes back to rewatch your action movie or action, they don't care, right? There has to be both symbiotically working together. And there's a lot of action that over the years of all the Marvel movies that I've done, where for whatever reason, either, you know, the directors, the stunt guys, whoever, right, things just fall by the wayside. Like really fun, cool ideas just fall by the wayside. Yeah. And for this show, it was fun. I was able to reach back in my grab bag of like cap moves that have been left over since Avengers, or even Avengers 2. Like I literally pulled, there's some stuff from like the Thor movies, and there's still like, there's a number of moves here and there, some cool action little bits, you know, that I was able to just go boink and just stick in, almost plug and play, and see it come to life the way I originally intended to it back in the movies, and see it for real, and have the audience response go, that's amazing, that's like better than the movie. I'm like, well, that was actually supposed to be an Avengers 1, so
wow.
you could have been nerding out even that much harder on Avengers 1, but it didn't get in there for whatever reason. So that's been awesome. But the other thing too is just playing with the cinematic nature. Like I wanted to look cinematically, I wanted to play with the lensing, I wanted to play with the lighting. One thing that we did early on was just grab, what I wanted to do was you know, the way they lit things in the 30s, you know, like noir sensibilities, and just like, and what Deacon says these days, you know, where he's just like, turn some light, you know, what you don't light is probably more important than what you actually light, you know. It's just like everyone just in the animation, they just light everything. There's nothing cinematic, there's not as much mood.
Yeah.
And the way I was trained is there's no different, no difference. So I just wanted to go for it, and we did. And seeing the audience actually respond, like some of the reactions, people are like calling out the visuals and how beautiful they feel look. And so I think that across the board feels like that's been a great achievement. I think that all the different things are come together. But as for one particular moment, it's too hard, man. There's so many, like every episode you could name, it's like, what's a rad thing in this episode? It'd be like, well, blah blah and blah.
Right. No, but it's just I guess to confirm or add more to what you've already heard.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I mean we have this community of folks that listen, and we have kind of a message board, and people every time will see some certain shots from almost every episode. I mean, I know from or I guess maybe episode 8, a lot of people talked about that Hawkeye shot that was just gorgeous as he's going down. But then the action as well. I meant to say this earlier when you were talking about the anime influences. That's been a thing we've talked about the entire time, is how right y'all got all these action scenes.
That's awesome.
And how beautiful I mean, especially, Shang-Chi came out and we thought that the choreography and the action there was so great. And then to have that in this show at the same time really feels like a heyday for Marvel whenever it comes to those action sequences.
Well, and we talk a lot about how we view it through the lens of, does the action inform the plot, or are we just putting it in there to have it in there? And we talk a lot on our podcast about how we felt like What If really did a good job of informing the plot and keeping us captivated despite it just being an action sequence.
Yeah, and that's always the challenge. And it's funny too, because it's a sticky statement, right? When it's just like, does it inform the plot? The fight has to tell a story. I've heard that stuff forever, and it's gotten to the point where it's like I hardly even think of that anymore, because I just been doing it for a while. I think it's just instinct and gut at a certain point, because yes, it has to do exactly everything that you talk about, but sometimes I wonder if people pose that question before they actually start just doing the sequence. Sometimes it can hamstring them in a way. And then you get something that's not as entertaining, for odd reason, because if it's trying too much to tell like a story, then where's the visceralness? Where's the energy? Where's the musicality? Where's the subtle nuance that's going 1,000 miles an hour? You know what I mean? So I think there's parts where yes, a story has to track. You have everything that you said is valid, but I think there's a way to achieve it that is sometimes lost on some people. So you get one version or the other. You don't get Goldilocks. You don't get that's just right. You get something that has way little action, but it's all about the MacGuffin. Here's the thing I'm trying to get, and it's just but all your moves are basic, and the way it's shot is basic, because you're just worried about telling the story. And then you get other stuff where like, well, here's a ton of fluff, and I don't care anymore because it's just a bunch of stuff. So we try and do our best, and I think it's just become, for me, it's feel. You know what I mean? So I've done martial arts for a long time, not these days because I'm too busy working, so I don't get to do any of that anymore. But back in the day, I did a lot of wushu and other martial arts, and that was even before I did any stuff for Marvel. So I brought that to my fight scenes in Marvel, and I think certain stunt guys and fight guys sometimes respond to that. So that's always been in me. So I just bring it, and I bring it to the animation. I did the same thing when I brought it to stuff in Samurai Jack. I would bring the same thing because I had already trained then. So I'm just like, yep, I'm putting my stuff, I'm putting my moves in here. So I would just choreograph it and just do it. And so doing it on this level with these heroes and having be what we want on the screen straight away without too many filters, that has been fantastic. I'm glad you guys and your viewers like respond to that, because I definitely shoot for that. And some of those fight scenes actually went on longer. We had to cut it for time, but there's still some fun ideas we had to like leave on the cutting room floor. Like when Ultron won, there's like a sequence where we see him defeat all those Avengers.
I had wondered that,
but we couldn't get it past the board phase because it's like the episode was too big and we didn't have the funds to actually tell a slightly larger, so we had to like find the spots to trim. And so yeah, but no, I appreciate
it. Wound up working. It wound up working in a different way because it gives you a little bit of that, if you choose to see it that way, that Tony vision that he had in the Age of Ultron movie, where he's the last one and all the other Avengers are falling around him.
Totally. And that was like even in the script editing phase, or even just talking about story early and getting at the beat outlines and everything else before we even wrote the final script. There was a loose idea that there was a bit more time, that he didn't get all the Avengers in one spot. I always, ever since we knew that there was going to be Ultron wins and there's this apocalypse, an image of me that I wanted to do, which we never got a chance to do, was the notion of some Avengers are going to survive, and he's going to go and he's going to hunt them down in this desolate world. And there was like an encounter I wanted to do that would be so bittersweet, of seeing like this radioactivity ravaged Cap, kind of like out on some desolate dunes, protecting a ragtag group of survivors. And Vision, Ultron, finds him, and a small fight shows up, but Cap just can't, and like he knocks him down, and Cap does that whole thing where it's like, I can do this all day. And Vision just says, no, you can't. And just we get to a silhouette, and he just breaks his neck, just kills him.
Wow,
man.
And then he looks at the survivors who just saw their hero fall, and his the eyes light up, and like now those people are toasted. Really bleak, dark stuff. I'm like, yeah,
it's incredible.
But we didn't have time. We don't have time to.
I feel like I was there right now.
Yeah, we don't have time to do some of that stuff. So we had to, like, here they are in the internet and hub, and they all die.
Yeah.
But
well,
we do what we can.
Brian,
well,
I mean this sincerely.
Job.
Yeah, you did. And I want to say genuinely thank you. Every time we get a chance to talk to somebody who works on these things, it can be an art director, it can be a director, it can be an actor. Every time we talk to somebody, we're just so blown away by the attention to detail when we leave. And just know that we really appreciate that. Like, that's why we love the MCU, is that you care this much about the thing you're doing. We talked to Andy Park, and he cares that much about the costume he's designing. Like, everybody we talk to cares about their thing at such a high level, and that's what makes you guys so great. So seriously, thank you. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you guys. But also, it's like, shout out to our team and our vendors, because it's like Paul Lassane and his team, Cynthia, Christina, and then Stefan and Simon. We had such a great, we pulled together a great amount of people that love this stuff too, and have been dying to get to do this kind of thing on screen for a while, and here they all are, being able to flex their muscles. And that's great. And with the guidance of Kevin, the cool thing is the trio, Kevin, Lou, and Victoria, it's like they didn't treat this project any differently than the movies or the TV shows they were doing. Early on, we were just wondering, like, is it gonna be like, yeah, because it's animation, there's gonna be some sort of like taking the foot off the gas and being kind of like whatevs, we don't know, because this is the first time they've done something quite like this. And Brad was kind of like, no, man, no, they're gonna bring it. And they did. And it's just like, for them, they're the same attention that they give to every movie, the same notes if they're giving it to like Taika on Thor 3 or Thor 4. It's like they're doing the same thing with us. And that was
that's cool.
That was really wonderful to experience, because it meant that we weren't some sort of like relegated to the kids table because of animation kind of sensibility, because that does happen, at times, live action to animation, there's a poo-pooing. But they were not thinking that way whatsoever, and that's great. They're treating it like, this is no different than the movies, this is no different than the shows. Here we go. And I think you guys can attest to the fact that maybe we achieved that, because some people are so that's awesome. But thanks, man. Thanks you guys for loving it. Thanks for watching it.
Oh,
thanks for joining our show
for season 2 now.
True.
Yeah, I'm knee deep in season 2 right now. Obviously, I can't talk about that, but we got stuff cooking. And yeah, that Gamora Tony episode that was supposed to be in season 1, as you've probably heard, but because of like COVID and other issues, vendor just couldn't quite get it done in time, etc. So it was either, hey, do we postpone the entire season like another year just so that we can have that episode in it, or do we just like wait and let that thing go back an episode? That's going to be in season 2. So in a way, it's going to act as a little bit of a prequel, where you get to see how those two people came together. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, no, that is fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Brian. Like, this means a lot to us that you joined us, and we're big fans, and keep doing it. We can't wait for season 2.
Oh, we're trying, man. We're gonna keep doing it as long as the audience allows us. We'll keep doing what we can.
Keep doing it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Thanks so much.
Oh, thanks again, Bryan.
All right, take it easy, guys. Bye bye.